I got sidetracked being weird again and I can't remember what I was saying. Hello everyone, I am Tessellating Hexagons. Today's the 8th day of VEDA, it's the 8th of April. Wow, I never would have guessed that the 8th day of the video every day of April challenge would happen to fall on the 8th day of April. It's a Friday and we're back to our first format of the cycle. It's our first repeat format because it's a Friday and it's the second Friday of the month. And this time, I'll be doing a serious, genuine, real Fair Trial Friday because if you missed it last week, I did a kind of tongue-in-cheek fair trial of real life, which I don't normally do April Fools, like I said, but I'd been planning that video for over a year, so really got no excuse for how meh quality it turned out, really. Anyway, as I said in that video, in all subsequent Fair Trial Fridays, I'm going to tell you what game I'm going to talk about up front, so you can kind of follow along with what I'm saying. So, the structure of these fair trials is going to be much better than the sloppy nonsense that was oh god, that sounds like a euphemism. The hot mess, that's not really any better. The general arse party, god fucking damn it. The kerfuffle that was last week. You know what, I've said so many terrible euphemisms at this point that I can't even remember the grammar of what I was saying. The point is, the rest of the fair trials are going to be better structured than last week's one. There we go. So, the game that I'm going to be talking about this week is, well, I don't really have a box for it because it's digital download only, but Pokémon Picross for the Nintendo 3DS. The reason why I stutter over the name is Picross as a brand. The name comes from, well, it's a portmanteau of picture and crossword, so picture, crossword, Picross, Picross. But in my head, I say it Picross, and, well, there's a game mode in the franchise referred to as Micross, as in micro Picross, because it's kind of Picrossception. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Pokémon Picross is a crossover between the Picross brand and the Pokémon franchise. Now, Pokémon, a lot of people, well, enough people are familiar with it that I don't really need to explain it, but it's mostly a Picross game, but with Pokémon as the solutions to the puzzles. And how Picross works is, well, it is what it claims to be. It's a picture crossword. It's a logic puzzle, where you're presented with a grid. It starts as a 5x5 grid, and then later puzzles have 10x10, then 15x15, and then harder ones are 20x15, so they're longer than they are tall. And each row and each column have sequences of numbers attached to each one, which tells you, it's sort of like the same logic that you apply to playing Minesweeper. So if you have a column that says 1, 2, 3, then there's somewhere in that column, in that order, there's a single block by itself that you fill in, and then there's 2 in a row, and then there's 3 in a row, but there's at least one empty space separating the 1 and the 2, and the 2 and the 3. And you have to just work out, how can I satisfy these conditions for every column and every row simultaneously? And as a format, I really like it. It's one of my favorite puzzle game genre brand thingy things ever. And since I certainly used to be a Pokemon gamer, it's not that I've stopped, and it's not that I've lost interest, I don't know what the deal is, because I intend to get both Pokemon Sun and Moon, because Nintendo just has me that whipped, apparently. But I got both Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and I just stopped playing once I got to Lily Cove City for some reason. I don't know why! I don't dislike Pokemon. I've been a fan of the series for donkey's years. I've logged over 1,000 hours on Pokemon Diamond alone, although that is probably my most played of the bunch. Still, so you would have thought that combining one of my favourite logic puzzle things with a franchise of games that I'm already quite a fan of, you would have thought that would create the perfect puzzle game for me. But, how do I respond to this one? Well, the game itself it's a freemium. It's Nintendo's approach to a freemium game. Well, I'm not sure if that's quite the right word. It's free to play, and then you can pay actual money to do stuff with it. I don't like it when I don't like that kind of game in general, but I don't like it when Nintendo does it either. Although I have more beef comparatively with the Street Pass Me Plaza on the 3DS, because there's a load of unlockable games in that where you have to pay real world money, whereas everything else in that app thing you could just pay for using play coins, which you just get by having the 3DS in sleep mode and then using the pedometer. But then there are games that you have to pay for using real world money, and you can't use play coins, and I refuse to do that, because fuck off. As a game, I feel like Pokémon Picross is slightly more justified for having microtransactions, but again, as a matter of pride, I refuse to partake. So what does it do right as a game, first of all? Well, as I've said, I really like the Picross puzzle style, and it feels weird saying Picross so consistently, because like I said, in my head I pronounce it Picross, but I know that's wrong, because it's picture, not picture. In the same way that it's a GIF because it's a graphics interchange format, not a giraffics interchange format. Fight me. But yes, as a Picross game in general, just the fact that it has Pokemon as a solutions to the puzzle doesn't really add or detract from the fact that it is solidly well made. It's certainly a valid entry in the Picross series. For what it does really well. And there is something of an incentive to actually complete each puzzle, because in regular Picross games, you just get a load of puzzles and then you solve them and then that's it. In Pokémon Picross, you've got a load of puzzles where you have to solve one to proceed to the next, and there's kind of a world map kind of thing going on, which is an interesting take, and I think it works rather well. And for completing each puzzle that depicts a Pokemon that you've not caught before, you catch that Pokemon, and then you can use that Pokemon as a power-up of sorts in later puzzles. There's a whole bunch of different things they could do. There's stuff like various types of hints where they'll reveal squares for, like they'll solve part of the puzzle for you. Like, for example, there's cross reveal, where depending on the power of the Pokemon using it, it'll reveal between 1 and 5, maybe more, columns vertically and rows horizontally. And there are all these different power-ups associated with different Pokemon types. So cross reveal is always a fire-type Pokemon, and normal-type Pokemon always do rising reveal, which is like cross reveal but only vertical, or slash reveal, which is ground and rock, which is horizontal only. And then there are other ones as well, like water and ice types have blue force, which is a hint system that's included by default in other Picross titles, certainly the Picross E titles, also for the 3DS, which I have all of because they're brilliant. It'll light up columns and rows in blue, where you can use the squares that you've already filled in to deduce what should go in that column. So for example, if you have a 5x5 puzzle, and one of the rows is simply 3, then it'll be highlighted in blue because you'll know that no matter what, the central square of that row must be filled in, because there's no, you can't fit 3 squares in a row on that row without including the middle square in some way, shape, or form. So there are a load of power-ups like that, and they vary with the power. So some Pokemon can only use their powers on 10x10 puzzles or 15x15. Some can go the full 20x15, and then they have different degrees of power. Some will reveal more squares at once, or be active for longer, or be more powerful, depending on the type of power-up. And I think that's a really nice touch, because it gives you a reason to want to solve all these puzzles and get different Pokemon. And then there's another aspect to that as well, where, as I've said, in the original Picross titles, you just solve the puzzle and then that's it. In Pokemon Picross, there are actual missions to go with it. So there are 3 to 4 missions on each puzzle, depending on the point in the game, where it'll be solve in X amount of time, solve using only this type of power-up, or don't use this type of power-up, and then everyone always has one mission that's complete all the above missions in the same run of the puzzle. And I think that's a nice touch, because it gives a sort of interesting challenge mode / twist to the gameplay, which I think is actually rather nice, because you could just say you come up against a really difficult 20x15 puzzle. You could, for instance, use a load of dragon-type Pokemon, because their associated power-up is Square Reveal, and there are a load of legendary dragon types that reveal a literal shit ton of squares if you just use their power-up. But then you might have a condition, a mission condition, as it were, that says don't use any reveal power-ups, so that rules out a whole load of them and makes it a lot harder. And there's no obligation to do that, but you can, and you get a reward for it. On top of all this, there's an achievement system as well, or they refer to it in-game as medals, because I don't know, achievements are trademarked by Xbox and or Steam or something like that, I don't know. But the point is that there are these little extra things you can do, and obviously there's the standard congratulations, you booted up the game kind of achievements. There's stuff like, you solve the puzzle using button controls, you solve the puzzle using stylus controls only, solve X number of puzzles, fill in X number of squares over the course of your play through the entire game. And then there's slightly more obscure stuff, like complete a puzzle using this given team of Pokemon which have some stylistic link to them. So there's one where you have to set 5 Pokemon that are all black and white, and it gives 5 specific ones you have to use in that team, and they're all black and white. Or solve a puzzle with only Dialga and Celebi set because they're time travel based Pokemon. That sort of idea, which again I think is really clever. And then there's other ones where it's just use X power up 50 times, and there's one for each one of those. And there actually is an incentive to do those as well, because missions and medals both yield the in-game currency referred to as Picross or Picross, probably Picross, and you use those to progress through the game. You use those to unlock later areas, which again is all well and good because most missions in the game yield it. The only ones that don't are missions that either yield mural tiles, which is this game's version of Picross, which again has its own reward, although I've yet to complete the mural tile things, and Outworld missions, which don't yield any reward whatsoever for some reason. And by obtaining medals, for every medal you get 3 Picross, which, again, is good, because then you have an incentive to go and do these weird little random side shit things, because then you can unlock later areas more easily. And again, that gives you an incentive to actually do these challenges, which is good game design. But what does this game do not quite so well? Well, the Picross are the biggest problem here, because at the start of the game, in order to teach you how the Picross system works, you get about 50 for every puzzle you solve, and then that allows you to, unlock these features, because you have to, basically, in order to do anything in the game, you have to pay in Picross. You have to pay to unlock more slots, so you can have up to 5 Pokemon in a team. You can have up to 5 Pokemon power-ups in each puzzle, but you have to pay Picross to unlock those party slots. You get 1 for free at the start, but even then, that's paying for it using Picross you get in a tutorial, and you're required to pay for it then. You have to pay to unlock later areas in the game, and the prices for those get increasingly ridiculous. To the point where, I'm at the point now where unlocking a new area costs 220, 230, even 250. And at the start of the game, you get about 50 Picross for every puzzle, and you think, oh, well, this is going to be fine, because we're going to get that number of Picross for every puzzle we solve. Lol, nope, you get about 6 for every one that you solve, assuming that you do every single mission in a single puzzle. Because you'll get, 1 Picross for solving the puzzle in X amount of time, 1 for not using X type of power-up, and then 3 for completing all the above missions, and then maybe an extra 1 or a mural tile for doing some other obscure piece of shit with a puzzle. And so, it takes ages to grind up the Picross to unlock later areas, and the other way of grinding Picross is doing this daily training thing, which is a nice feature. It is kind of fun. You just solve a bunch of randomly generated 7x7 Picross puzzles, and if you do that within a certain amount of time, then you get bonus Picross, and that's a daily event, so you can grind them that way, but it takes ages. The only other way, besides all that, of obtaining Picross is to buy them using real-world money. Now, I get that it's a free-to-play game, and so they want to make money out of it somehow, because you can just download it for free and everything's fine. And essentially that makes it a pay-what-you-want game. But just the way that it's handled makes I'm painfully aware that I'm playing a free-to-play game, and that ruins the immersion, that ruins the enjoyment of it, because free-to-play games, they just feel like scams, because you can tell that they're out to get as much money from you as they can convince you to part with, and it's not an enjoyable feeling being treated like the mark or the sucker throughout. And literally everything in the game is out to get as many Picross from you as possible, and of course, because they want more than the game will willingly supply at a satisfactory rate, it's convincing you to just pay for more, because the in-game shop has 2 one-time use offers. You can get a discount on buying 200 Picross and 800 Picross at once. Then, you can buy them in a various number of quantities, but those 2 have special offers, and then you have to pay more next time you come back for them. Now, I will concede, there is a limit to that. Once you buy X number of Picross, which I'm assuming equates to once you've spent X amount of money on this game, then you'll get unlimited Picross, which is nice, I suppose, because then that prevents young players from spending a stupid amount of money and then getting in trouble with their parents by stealing their parents' debit card and doing whatever. But while that is a good safeguard against that then completely devalues the Picross in the first place, because if you just pay £25 or whatever to get the game to have the game completely, then you then have no incentive of doing the missions or the medals or anything like that. So it's kind of broken in that regard. And I sort of forgot to mention as well, there's an energy meter in the top left corner, and every time you fill in a square, that drains by 1. Even if you fill in a square erroneously and then erase it and then put an X in that square instead, it still costs energy to make that move. And that's the game's way of restricting how much you can play at once, because that energy recharges over time. It's a rate of 1 energy per minute. Given that it caps you at 200, 300 energy, and again, you have to pay to upgrade that several times using pick rights. Once you upgrade it to its maximum level, you then have unlimited energy, so you can keep playing the game for as much as you want, but even then, once you have unlimited energy, then you run out of things to do really quickly unless you pay to have more things open to you. Plus, there's Pokemon Mega Evolutions, where you have to pay a one-time fee of 300 or 500 pick rights in order to access the Mega Evolved Pokemon puzzles, because every now and then you'll solve a Pokemon puzzle and then it'll open a path to one side, and then there's a little Mega Evolve icon above that puzzle, and it'll say, you can't do this puzzle, you need to buy the Mega Pencil, which costs a stupid number of pick rights. And so that's another way that it's out to get your money. And then there's Outworld Mode, where it's all the same puzzles again, except the missions aren't worth anything, so you have no incentive to do those. The only incentive is to clear all of those missions so you get the 1 medal that's, or however many medals it is, for clearing X number of Outworld Mode missions. And that's just the game's way of introducing Mega Picross, I think it's called, where you'll get hints that span 2 columns at once. And I think that's the most bullshit mode of Picross. I have never liked it since its introduction in Picross E3. I mean, they had to include it somehow, but again, you have to pay triple digits of pick rights in order to unlock that mode, and you get nothing out of it. The missions in that are not worth anything. You don't get pick rights for completing missions there. And while the missions in that mode are creative, because they're kind of the opposite of normal mode missions, because normal mode missions are like, use X type of power-up at least once, set at least X number of Pokemon. In Outworld Mode, it's set no more than X number of Pokemon, or even don't set any Pokemon at all, or don't use this type of power-up at all, that sort of thing. And I think that's clever. But you don't get any reward for doing that. There's no incentive to do those missions. So, overall, as a Picross game, it's fun. But it frustrates me because it's so obviously a free-to-play game. It doesn't hide the fact that it wants to get as much money out of you as possible within reason, because it's a family-friendly company, so there is a limit to how much you can spend on the game before it says, alright, you've paid enough, have the entire game. The amount that they want from you before you reach that cap is like 5 times as much as the game's actually worth anyway. The other Picross games, Picross E 1 through 6, on the Nintendo eShop for the 3DS at the very least, you pay about £4 or £5 to download them, and then that's it. You've got the entire game for that amount of money. Pokémon Picross is not 5 times bigger than those games, so it's not worth paying £25 or £30 to get everything handed to you on a plate. But then that means that if you don't pay for pick rights, then you're going through the game at a snail's pace, and it's really slow. And that's not replay value. That's not bringing you back because you want to keep playing. It's bringing you back because you have to keep fucking waiting to continue playing. And it's, on paper, it's well executed, but in practice, it's so frustrating. So, how do the general public feel about this game? What's the general critical reception to it? You'll notice that I now have a nice little graph thing showing on the x-axis, is it good or bad? On the y-axis, is it worth getting or not? Because you can have a good game that's not worth getting, or a bad game that's so bad that it is worth getting. So, the public feel roughly about here, about this game. And, honestly, I agree, basically. The public have got this one spot on. It's not overrated, it's not underrated. Is it worth getting? Yes, if you're patient and if you're into Picross, because Pokemon are just there to sell the brand. There's nothing overtly Pokemon that you can get out of this game apart from the fact that it uses Pokemon, and an understanding of Pokemon mechanics will help in this game a little bit, because then you'll know which type each Pokemon is, and you'll have an easier time solving the missions and knowing what sort of rough shape each puzzle's going to end up being. But for the most part, it's 90% Picross and 10% Pokemon. So if you're into Picross, then maybe it's worth getting as long as you have the patience to sit through the free-to-play bullshit. But if you're more into Pokemon than Picross, or if you don't like the free-to-play model, or if you feel you're at risk of spending more money than this game's worth, then avoid it. But if you're willing to be patient with it, and if you like Picross as much as I do, then invest in it, but don't pay more than it's worth, because it is not worth as much as the spending limit in the game. Well, before editing, I've rambled for like 25 minutes about this game, so have fun editing this. I have been and will continue to be Tessellating Hexagons, and I'll see you in whichever of my videos you happen to choose to watch next. Goodbye.